bhavatu sahana bhunaktu sahaviryam karavavahai tejasvinavaditam mastoma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great strength and energy. May our study be of an illumined nature. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So nice to see you all. Normally we have some questions lined up, and I orientate something around that. So are there any questions?
So I trust in the divine, and if I let the divine take its course or its path, and I have a belief in that, I feel things go very well. But in the past few days, things have gone really well, and I found myself very busy, and I'm mindful that it's the divine, but I'm not mindful of the divine as much during my working practice, even though the last time your guidance was to have a seat beside me and have Sri Ramakrishna sit there beside me. I'm mindful. I'm certainly mindful, and I know that any of the positive results that are happening are as a result of the divine, but it doesn't seem like a really calm, slow process, which is what I'd like it to be, so I could probably appreciate it more. And if the solution is that I should go back to having a chair beside me for Sri Ramakrishna, I take that on board, but I'm just wondering, is there something else I could do to slow the process down and enjoy it more, I suppose, is what I'm saying. Enjoy the fruits more.
So from time to time, we'll all be momentarily busy. There'll be busy patches. And in those moments, naturally, it's easy to engage more in the world, that is, in a world of forgetfulness of the truth that surrounds us and the glory which is there. But in those moments, we probably have to spend much more time in the early morning to charge our battery, our spiritual battery. Knowing that it's going to be a busy day, dedicate all actions in advance. And some actions require the full capacity of our attention. So we have to take extra measures. It's part of the game, you know. And knowing that we'll be busy, we do that. There are certain activities that require a full capacity of our concentration. And so we can take it as a unit activity. Before the unit activity, we can dedicate the action to the divine. After the activity, we can do the same. So nobody does all the activities in one go. We have a capacity to do something within a framework of time. It's nature's way of getting us not to do everything all at once. It's not possible. Space is the natural opportunity that we have so that not everything happens at once. So we take every activity as a unit activity. And then in moments where the mind doesn't have to be fully occupied, we can practice the presence of the divine then, at that moment in time as well. And then at the end of the day, we can collect all our activities, as it were, in a basket, an offering basket, along with some rose flowers, and offer it along with a report to the executive officer of our own life, that is the divine. And so that in moments away from the office or away from business, we can also have the opportunity to align the mind again or realign the mind again. And the difficulty in the evenings is the mind will be full of the busyness of the day. So we have to think in one of two ways. We can momentarily take a pause, that is, we can withdraw into the core of our being where everything is poised. In other words, sit on God's throne for a while and bless and beam from there. Everybody really has the capacity to do that in moments where there is an interval between activities. But we can use 1,000 tools as well. We can put pictures everywhere. We can put a seat, as you suggest, or as I suggest, where the divine is your constant companion. And you keep that cushion there, you keep a picture there. And from time to time, you can gaze into each other's eyes lovingly. There are other moments. Anybody who's doing japa with a mala, of course, can have the mala with them. That's a technique. But we also have the hands. In the practical yoga and tantric system, really, the hand is an opportunity to do many, many poses, hand poses called mudras. And each one can have a meaning related to the subtle graces of the Lord, which comes to us as tanmatras, subtle elements. These are not different from the divine. What we are is a miniature universe. And the greater universe has all the characteristics that we have manifested naturally as us. So that there is a cosmic mind, just as we have a mind, there is a body, it's called a universe. There are subtle elements which are there. There are natural forces everywhere. And there are moments where we go into a causal sleep. We go into a state of blissful nothingness, if you will. And the universe does the same thing. The universe also goes to sleep. You can put it in a different way. It rests in the divine lap, rests in the divine essence, and re-emerges from there. So thinking on these ways creates some kind of stability in the mind. And yes, we have to use 1,000 tools. We always have to bear in mind the energy we are using is not ours. Nothing of this energy belongs to us. It is all borrowed energy. And what is the Lord, and why is that Lord lovable? What we call the Lord, or the most supreme principle in the universe, that infinite invisible, is that entity that has a characteristic of flowing. And it's flowing through all the nervous system, it's flowing through your speech, it's flowing through the hands, every leg, every eye. And this flowingness is a pouring of truth and goodness and love everywhere. And the fact that we don't notice it is just because we register the world in a different way. We can learn to register it to its proper owner, re-register everything, and revalue everything, and put it in the divine realm rather than the worldly realm. There's a common misunderstanding that spirituality and secular life is something entirely different. When we engage in spiritual life, it means we go into a corner and we pray and we meditate, or we do japa. And we think then that engaging the world is entirely different and separate, forgetting that the most stable philosophy that we have, the highest conclusion that we have, is monism. We can find no fault with it. Every concept of God has some imperfection with it. It's not complete. And yet non-dualism embraces every aspect of it. So it's extremely complete and acts as a last tool in our toolbox to deal with all these difficulties and problems that we may have, that may arise. This abhyasa yoga, constant remembrance of the divine, it sounds very easy. The attention wanders off, we notice it, we bring it back. Why can't we practice it? Because in the first place, we don't notice it wandering off. We get caught out. And we just have to learn the art of being much more astute in observing two things. Firstly, at any given moment, what is the condition of the mental field? What are the players on it at any given time? Does it fall into the category of constant activity, where we are orientated more toward the results than toward the expression of the energy we're using now? Every activity can be viewed as an expression of this divine pouring energy. And when we do that, not only we become more efficient because we're living in this present moment, we cease to be efficient when the present moment misses us because we are orientated toward what may happen in the future, anxiety, what will happen next, what will happen next, mitigates against what's happening now. So practicing the presence of the divine is equivalent to being fully aware and entrenching ourselves in the pure being of this moment, right now, right here, and seeing the deep value in it. So this pouring attitude can be done, can be seen. That's a useful formula. Another useful formula is to take up a devotional attitude and say, Lord, this is your work. I'm your servant. I'm your agent. I'll report to you at the end of the day. And all this work are so many flower offerings to you. Every unit activity we can visualize with great, wonderful poetic imagination. This is the sweetest flower that I'm offering to you. It is the best flower also, because I'm going to do it, all this unit activity I'm going to do in a highly beautiful way, a perfect way. It's going to be a perfect offering. So this is also adds to a sweetness in our activities. At the beginning of the day, we can speculate whatever activity is there today. Let us offer it. From a practical point of view, also, it helps to do planning so that we know what the basket of flowers or fruits are likely to be. And at the end of the day, we can give an account. Did we offer all the fruit today? Did we offer all the flowers today? And the fruit is really the expression, pa, let's call, is really used as a kind of analogy or a kind of metaphor, if you will, for the fruits of our activities, that is, the rewards, the effects of all our activities. And we can really register, if we're a devotee, like in this way, if we follow the sweet path of Bhakti Yoga, then we can really see that none of the fruits belong to us at all. You see, there's an old story. Some biologists, atheist biologists got together. Don't ask me how they can be atheists and have a discussion with God. Anyway, let it be like that. And they said, by the way, we have just discovered this abiogenesis. We know how to create life. You didn't do anything special. And the Lord says, well, how did you do it? He says, well, first we took some clay. He says, wait. Get your own clay. So we miss the point when we think all this belongs to us and leads to an entitlement. I have the right to do this, the right to do that. According to the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, the only right we have is the right to work. We don't have the right to the rewards. The rewards belong to another. It's only fair. So we make a mistake when we work so hard in order to get some kind of result, some kind of reward. It's not to say that we shouldn't have any goals or objectives. We keep that. We post it in our region and then work on the present moment. And then we enjoy our work. We don't enjoy our work when we're doing activities and we'd rather not be doing these activities. We consider themselves as drudgery. So if I'm a golfer, as I know you are, and I prefer golfing It takes much more physical energy. It makes you much more tired when you play a round of golf, 18 holes of golf, and you go about walking and hitting a ball, um, jumping for joy when you have a good shot, and commiserating when you have a bad one. So when we're doing some routine activities or activities which we consider to be drudgery, we feel much more tired, even though we may be sitting, even though the amount of physical energy or the metabolism that is required, the energy input, energy output is much less than playing golf. We feel exhausted. Why? Because when we're doing the work, we'd rather be playing golf. I mean, golf exhilarates us. And so we have to learn the art of changing that and saying, it is just as delightful to do the Lord's work. It's not my work at all. It's God's work. Every work is God's work. So these two techniques are available to us when our business increases. And then they become a sweet avenue. They actually become a spiritual practice. You may say, may my business even increase more so that I can offer many more flower offerings. You see, the heart doesn't behave in a hard-working way all the time. We have to learn a lesson from the heart. It's a peristaltic pump. I tell you many times that it works, it stops. It works, it stops. It pumps, it stops. It tick, tick, stop. Tick, tick, stop. And there's no holiday for it. It doesn't say, well, for over 70 years I've been pumping your heart 1 beat per second. I'm now pretty tired and I've never had a holiday. I've never applied for a vacation. And so I'm going to the Bahamas tomorrow. Good luck. It never does it because it knows the art of work, rest, work, rest. And so in business, anybody who's busy can do it. In the ancient days, there was nobody more busy than King Janaka. All the kings of the day were more busy than any chief executive today. And then, of course, the practical aspect, as I mentioned earlier, of understanding what unit activities can be done. This requires planning because what is yoga? Well, yoga is equilibrium of mind. That means we eliminate all anxiety necessary or normally found to be necessary or deemed to be necessary. We eliminate all of that because we're not anxious about the future. We're orientated and concentrated on this second, what is happening now. And then after that, the next thing, and then the next thing. How many activities you have to do? The standard answer I give, you know this now. If you say 100,000 activities, I say nonsense. There's one activity, and then another, because we have this framework of time. We can't do everything in one go. It's not physically possible. It's not mentally or physically possible. So we have to do good planning. That means we have to have some planning system where the priority of what we do is planning itself. And this has been taught by many people in the business world and realm. But it is actually a kind of yoga in the sense that you have this more of an equilibrium of mind when you know what is the next activity. And then you add some sweetness to it and say, the next activity is using divine energy to offer a flower back to the divine by way of thanks, repaying a debt, a debt which is not asked for. Nobody's asking to repay the debt, but out of love we do it. Come on, Lord, you gave me this. I want to give you a present back. And if the Lord says, no, not necessary, you say, but it's yours anyway. And it's a token of my love for you, consisting of thankfulness. Thanks that You provide all these things free. You provide the opportunity, and you provide the opportunity for karma yoga, another way of saying occupational therapy. If my mind is not busy, if my hands are not busy, what would they be doing? They'd probably be restless in the realm of fear or fulfilling some kind of desire that is not helpful to us, that creates a diversion for us. So we have to be thankful that we are busy. The ancient kings, Janaka, for example, would have been extremely busy, and the Artha Shastra tells us how busy a daily routine is for a king. And this king is a sole ruler. Some advisors around, no doubt, but his responsibility is huge, enormous in those days. And yet we find King Janaka as a Rajarishi, a great, great saint, a great, great sage, a realized entity, but still performing his duty for the good of society. So there's another dimension to that. Whatever you're doing, if it does not have some aspect of goodness for society, then it doesn't seem to be as valuable as it could be. The highest state of spirituality is working for the welfare of the world. And if you say, no, I'm not a missionary or anything like that, no, you missed the point. Because you see, if you want to build a house, not everybody can be an architect. Not everybody can be a plumber. Not everybody can be an interior designer. Not everybody can be a civil engineer. Not everybody can be a roofer. You have to have all these diverse talents contributing toward one project. What is your particular role in it? What is your function as a particular jigsaw piece in this fabric of life? You have to find it out. So whatever you're doing will be useful, commonly useful to everybody. You may not immediately recognize it, but when you see the overall general scheme of things, your part is essential. It's like a vital part in a bridge, let's say the arch. You take it away, the whole thing collapses. It's designed like that. If you take away some of the fundamental constants in nature, the whole of the universe has collapsed. Gravitational constant, and all of these other things. There's over 20 constants that are required. We call this fine-tuning. That if you have a certain margin of irregularity within it, then it is so fine, we call fine-tuning, that the whole thing collapses. Intelligent design people use this as an argument. They say, if there's this intelligent design, that will explain why the whole universe is so finely tuned, like a fine-tuned clock or a fine-tuned machine. So we have to find out what is our part in it. Technically, it's called swadharma, something that you can do, nobody else can do. Nobody else has ever done. Nobody else can do now. Nobody else will ever do in the future. You are a divine angel sent here to fulfill a mission. Please fulfill your mission and go back from where you came to the heavenly room, if you will, and await further instructions, please. And we are pleased to do it, because we're all sent by the divine, as part of the divine, to fulfill a divine mission, and at the end of it, to realize our own divine nature. That is what all this work is for. It's called occupational therapy. When a person first joins in monastic life, they're deliberately made ultra busy. Because if they weren't, they would now pine for their parents at home, or their home, or their relatives, or their home-cooked meals, their mother, their father, all of this. To avoid that, keep the mind busy, as busy as possible. Don't complain, it's a gift. So that's what I would say. I see there are more questions here, 3 comments there in chat. Could I ask how to know whether we are progressing in spiritual life? And so, okay, so there's a question. Progressing in spiritual life. First of all, at the beginning of spiritual life, we take it like that. We take it in the same way as we take any other successful project, such as a career move. We think that there's a goal somewhere in the future, and we have to work toward it progressively. And in a sense, that's true. But I would rather put it in this way. It's an unfolding. The truth is already there. Perfection is already within us. It's not that it's to get in the future. To illustrate this, I always use the example of the royal king or queen or celebrity visiting a city. They visit the city. Naturally, before the royal visit, all the roads are swept, all the graffiti is whitewashed, all the heroin actors are hidden away, the royal visit is there, all the gardens are spruced up, all the royal apartments, guest apartments, are all redecorated and absolutely clean. All the flags are put, flying. Supposing somebody arrives in the city and he sees all of this, flags flying, all the roads glittering, wonderful, no litter anywhere, all the streets are sparkling clean, even the river that flows maybe through the city has had special treatment. The whole city looks sparkling and impressive, so that when the royal visitor goes through, that's what they'll see. Now, somebody visits the city, sees all of this, and asks this question: this royal entity, let's say king, has this king visited? Or is the king about to visit? If the king is about to visit, we can understand it. But when the king has come, we don't then put the graffiti back. We don't then muddy the streets. We keep them in a pristine condition. We have no idea whether the king is about to come or the king has come. In purifying the mind through all the means available to us, because all of the yogas, all of the approaches, all of the techniques only have this one goal in mind, that is cleanliness, cleaning out. So with everything clean, with our own city, our 11-gated city nice and clean, what will we expect? It'll be just as frustrating as not achieving something or having an anxiety about an unknown in the future if we say that there's a post-mortem condition that we have to achieve. Some progress in spiritual life we have to notice it. Some inner feeling we have to experience. And so it creates the anxiety of looking out of the window. Did God come yet? No. Oh. What about now? Nothing. Like a child in a car. Are we arrived yet? Look out again? Nothing. No God coming up the pathway. The king obviously is about to come and he's not here yet. This is an error. The king is already there. For this reason, we should clean. Already there, not to come. And so to view things as a kind of progress toward a future would be the recipe for spiritual anxiety and competitive meditation, competitive spiritual life. So that's the one error we can make. Now, on the other hand, there are signs and signals of spiritual growth. And I would rather say growth rather than progress, because progress will be self-evident. When inner growth occurs, there's a certain sense of freedom. There's a gradual progressive realization that occurs. With this potential, the whole thing can happen all at once. See Sri Ramakrishna's example. How long does it take to light a cave that's been dark for 1,000 years? You strike a match and instantaneously it's there. But it depends on this flow, this beautiful flow, this pouring entity, which we call the divine, flowing through. That is called grace. It depends on the matching grace. It depends on our willingness to be open to the flow of grace. That openness will give us the greatest fulfillment, because All the effort comes from that side. You step one step toward God, God will step 1,000 steps toward you. Now, Sri Ramakrishna puts it in a beautiful, different way. We all know what it is. The wind of God's grace is blowing. You but only have to set the sail. So there is some effort. The effort is in raising the sail. Even before that, we have to have an intention and set the sail. And the intention has to be one which is useful opening, one which is narrow and limiting. So with the view that there will be such an openness that grace will carry it. It will carry the sail by itself, it will blow. When you raise your sail in a sailing boat, huffing and puffing won't make the boat move. You can't do it by yourself. You want to transfer water from a great dam to the river. Doing it by spoonfuls won't help. Doing it by buckets won't help. All you have to do is open up the floodgates. When you open up the floodgates, the water, the grace flows by itself. So all we have to do is remove obstacles. All spiritual life is removing obstacles. Find out what are the obstacles. Now, fortunately, the yoga philosophy, couched in the language of Patanjali Yoga Sutras, tells us what these obstacles are. We call it kleshas. And one by one, we can remove the obstacles. But you see, they all stem from one single thing, and that is lack of knowledge, making a mistake, ignorance, what we call avidya. And the world is constructed that if we're not careful, then we'll fall foul of it. We'll make a wrong interpretation of what's in front. What's in front of you is only that divine element. So learn the art of noticing it. The greatest obstacle is egoism. To deal with this, we have a special workshop. The Enneagram and the Essence of Truth is coming up. This is entirely to do with identifying your non-standard ego, your greatest obstacle. Greatest obstacle is concerned with I and me and mine. And progress happens when we transfer that into thee and thine. So when we do that, then automatically an opening occurs. If you want to call that progress, you can. But don't think of it as something like a linear progression forward. That is something like going up a mountain or a hill. It may feel like that in the beginning, but it's more of an opening and uncovering. It's to do with removing your obstacles. So there's another question then going on like that. How does one begin to enter the flow? Many, particularly myself and those I work with, are aware of the existence of a flow and a higher consciousness, but have no practical method to begin. Okay. So you see, entering into flow, something like swimming. There are two things you can do in water. You can swim or you can sink. Sinking is not such a good idea. Drowning is not recommended. But everybody knows how to float. So we have to have the certainty that behind everything is a steady thing that flows through as a current in us. And it's flowing through now. It's flowing through in your question. It's flowing through as thought. And so to recognize this, just this much, will be something like a tuning. Everybody has, for a moment, the capacity to stop the attention from being directed in one way or the other and redirect it into a higher understanding, embracing more noble thoughts. We can call this as the game of life. Thinking that life is some kind of sport, with a sporting attitude, we can engage in it. And knowing that, right here, right now, that divine essence is here. It's not far away. It's not in a post-mortem condition. Right here, right now. This is called practicing the presence. So it requires a number of components. It requires an understanding of the principles. We learn this from scripture. It requires the explanation of it and personal help. We call this a competent teacher or guru. This requires the yearning on our part. People say, when will it happen? When will it happen? They want it to happen now. People want to head to samadhi first. They don't want to go through all the other processes and get there. And even that's not the highest state. Working for the welfare of all beings is much higher. So we have to recognize these various milestones when we become more generous, but these are individual milestones. There are things that impede us personally. And on an individual basis, there are general obstacles, no doubt. But let us take the one most difficult one, and that is egoism. Egoism means this identification with the body-mind, forgetting that, as the Bhagavad Gita says, an eternal portion of myself has become the individual soul, the individual being. Forgetfulness of this is called ignorance. And the consequence of it is called egoism. So this self-image that goes with it, this protecting it at all costs, is to our detriment. This is an impeding thing to the flow. So to remove these obstacles one by one, we can do it. The consequence of the egoism will be attachment, attraction and repulsion, pulling this way toward what we call pleasure, pulling away from things like fear. And the greatest fear is death. So, and then the last, of course, is clinging to life. Thinking that we are a body-mind complex, we cling to it in all desperation, thinking when it goes, the whole thing is extinguished. And even in spiritual life, this will be a fear. So, in a conversation with Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda, who was Narayan at that time, said, I want to sit on the edge. If I was a bee and there's a vessel full of honey representing the sweetness of bliss, I don't want to dive in, I'll lose myself. I want to sit on the edge and sip. And Ramakrishna says, why not dive in headlong? Why not lose yourself? Because you see, you won't really lose yourself. You'll never lose yourself. But you'll be saturating yourself with your own inner nature of bliss. You'll be enjoying the supreme nectar which is available. Don't think that you'll be extinguished. The fact that the body goes doesn't make you extinguished. That's a lesson we all have to learn. I think the Enneagram is a very useful tool. Many of you have been on it and found that it's helpful in dealing with this question of egoism. And because the structure of this ego is so carefully put together, so woven intrinsically, that it creates a certain stubbornness in us, because it becomes our very, very core, and our survival strategy depends on preserving it. As long as we have that, we will always have that obstacle. When will you know that we are progressing? When the obstacle of egoism gets removed and the ego instead becomes an open channel for divine grace to flow. The ego is not the problem. The ego is a component part. The sense of I is what makes you motivated in the first place. But egoism is something different. Egoism means I associate myself, my intrinsic sense of individuality, with an individual body, an individual mind, with a set of circumstances, and a struggling component that makes me keep it, preserve it, against unfair odds in the shape of events and scenes and people and places, awkward situations. As long as I feel that this is my struggle and that everything is opposed to me, and I have to either withdraw from it and ignore it, or attack it break it down, bang my head against a wall aggressively. One personality type, we say on the Enneagram, I wrote myself an angry letter and received a defiant reply. And that's what we're doing. This non-recognition of only oneness in the whole universe is giving us a lot of difficulties. It's not easy to get out of. We can do it progressively, but that is the way to tackle it. But we have to have all the tools and components at our disposal. First component we have is the power of attention. We have the capacity and power to shift our attention to a different place at any moment in time. Involuntarily we do it. When something more interesting and entertaining is there, then naturally all the intention moves in that direction. Now, if we have a mindset that understands the inner beauty of things, the richness that sits within the whole of nature, and we become attuned to it. What is nature? Not something outside ourselves. Nature is the whole universe, described in the Upanishads as from Brahma to a clump of grass. When we see that, when we recognize it, when we tune into it in a deep way, in a constant way, in a systematic way also, then something opens up. Don't ask me, when will it open up? That's not a good question. Growth is not about a when. Growth is growth in its own time, at its own pace. But the glory flows through. Something flows through and elevates us. Is there any exercise to lose the ego? I'm aware of this and can be achieved through meditation, but I have no idea where to start, nor to help those in my care also to do so. Yes, 2 methods for removing egoism. The first method I've mentioned already. In fact, I've mentioned both of these. I'll restate it. The first one is to take an understanding and attitude that there is one perfection flowing through all things, all bodies, all limbs, all heads, all arms, all units that we call upadis, that is, adapters. We can say adapters on the one side, limiting factors or adjuncts on the other side. Something like electricity flowing, and we have evidence of it because a light bulb is attached and an electrical connection is there also. So all of these adapters, if we can see the flowing current, just like we can understand there's an unseen flowing electrical current flowing through all things. Then, in a disciplined way, dedicated way, with full capacity for attention, and shifting this individuality to a universality which says there is a flow, including the flow through this. If I say it's flowing through all bodies, there's no egoism in it because all bodies includes what I formerly called my body. That's one way. Another way is a sweeter way. It is to see that intrinsically, an intrinsic source of life that religion calls God. We can see the Lord of the universe sitting in the hearts of every being. Then all activity is designed to worship that, and all sentiment is made to go through that. In short, if I am concerned about the other, if I'm concerned about the Lord sitting there, if I'm working for the welfare of all beings, I forget about myself. Then I put myself in the position of a child, or I put myself in the position of a companion, or a lover, or any of these particular attitudes. The ego is retained, but it now becomes a ripe ego. It now becomes a surrendering ego. It now becomes dedicated to non-demanding love. A sense of embodiment is still there. In the first case, the sense of embodiment will go. In the second case, you retain the sense of embodiment and use that. Lord, I am your servant. Lord, I'm at your disposal. I'm an instrument of your peace. St. Francis' prayer. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. And being used in this instrumental way, what becomes of this egoism? Meditation, where to start? We start with that. We start with shifting our conventional view of the world and putting some extra dimension to it, looking at things in an unusual way. We can take examples of saints and sages. You can take, for example, Jesus. For the Christians, you can take Jesus. We have to see that he viewed the world in a very different way. Then we have to investigate what was the inner wiring that made that entity look and behave differently, making a transformation in the world around him, making the blind see, the lame walk, the dead awake, because he viewed things in a different way. Lord Lazarus, had you been earlier, he would not have died. And the Lord says, he but sleepeth. Seeing him as a sleeping man, Lazarus awakes. Oh, this person is blind since childhood. Was it his fault? Or was it his parents' fault? Neither. There for the glory of God, to show, demonstrate the expression which is already there. That is the perfection that already sits within. Seeing that perfection, registering it, penetrating vision, seeing it, appreciating it, worshipping it with a sense of adoration, that perfection flows through, and the lame walk, the blind see. That's Jesus' wiring. Looking at things in a different way. Is the society bad? Is it full of lame people and blind people, poor people? No, I don't see it that way. I see the kingdom of heaven within everything. When I see that, there's a transformation. This is called spiritual healing. We can all have the capacity to do it. We can all have the capacity to look at somebody and something and change our valuation of it. We have to revalue everything. The world is not bad. God made the world and saw that it was good. You and I see it as bad. Shift your perspective. Look at things as God sees things. Sit on his golden throne and see how does the world look from there. From that vantage point, everything is different. And everything is one entity when we look at it in that way. Everything is golden divinity when we look at it in this way. When we look at it in the usual way, it's actually a distorted way. What we call conventional outlook is actually a distorted vision seen under a sense of hypnosis called ignorance. What's the antidote? You cultivate knowledge. Find a different way of looking at something. With respect, the person is in spiritual and or emotional pain, is not necessarily able to respond to cognitive message. Is there not some method whereby the person can be relieved on the cognitive to enter the spiritual? We're all in the spiritual. There's no single person who is not on a spiritual path. Whether you take it like that or not, your destiny and your purpose is spiritual. How does it express itself? It expresses itself in wanting to do better, the drive toward perfection, the desire to have pleasure and joy is all just the same desire for perfection and happiness. It's only that the method that is selected is wrong. And we are living in a world which has some laws, but the most fundamental law is a causal law. And if we are living with the facts, then there's not much that can be done except we can take this present moment and change it. We can't change the past, but this moment we can change. Investing in this moment, the next moment becomes different. Saturating the mind with truth and goodness and purity makes a new habit in the mind, in the unconscious level. And that becomes a suction. It has a pulling power on the world around us. We can't call anything else responsible for this condition. The oft-quoted passage, so many times quoted by me, you see, from the Bhagavad Gita, you're your own best friend, your own worst enemy. Raise yourself up by yourself, or lower yourself by yourself. Does that mean that we say, this is this person's own karma, we leave it to them? No, we should have compassion for all suffering. But don't think that you can change it. You can help somebody, that's no doubt knowable. But to have a penetrating vision is transformative. That's the difference. Buddha was compassionate, but he also had the capacity to transform lives for thousands of years to come. We have to stand there and view things as they viewed it. Look at things different. There are different possibilities. 1,000 problems arising, 2,000 solutions are available. And when the mind is not in any particular concentrated position, when routine is there, brushing the teeth, walking, whatever it is, mulling around with various problems, some solution comes to us. It comes to us from the divine area, the creative aspect of our own being. We call it inspiration. Then we use it. We see, does this solution fit? If it fits, we use it. If it doesn't fit, we wait. The waiting is a listening process. So there's a method whereby the person can be relieved on the cognition to enter all in the spiritual. Whether we know it or not, we're all on a pilgrim path. And nature has a way of pushing us this way and that way, prodding us. We call this pain. The Bhagavad Gita I was telling last night, you see, starts with that. The first chapter is very valuable. It tells us that spiritual life begins with despondency and expresses itself possibly through a nervous breakdown. This is Arjuna's condition. The whole of the Bhagavad Gita is lifting him out of that condition. We study that text well with a competent teacher and commentaries there from the ancient commentators using various perspectives that they had and insights. We get all these formulas from there. What is your opinion on the role of dreams? I think this level of consciousness is of great relevance to relating to the high realm. Yes, 2 weeks ago now, maybe 3, we did a dream workshop and indicated the value of dreams. I don't know when we'll do another one, but if there's demand, we can do it. You see, Freud said that dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. And most people who haven't gotten out of the habit of registering and interpreting dreams, they know how to understand the messages and value of the cosmic mind in dreams. So indigenous Australians, indigenous Africans, coming from where I come from, and Native American Indians, they are all able to catch dreams and interpret them. So when the next dream course comes, you can register of it and see how we fare. All right, so now it's nearly 8 o'clock. So we'll leave it at there. And I hope I answered your great, great questions. And more than that, I hope it was useful to you.
Thank you, Swamiji. That was great help.
Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.